Let's begin with something simple and maybe a little uncomfortable. Knowledge without action is self-deception. Now think about that for a moment. We live in an age where information is everywhere. You can read a book in a week. You can watch a seminar in an afternoon. You can listen to advice while driving to work. You can collect quotes, save videos, highlight passages, underline ideas. And after all that, your life can remain exactly the same. Why? Because knowledge does not change your bank account. Knowledge does not change your body. Knowledge does not change your relationships. Applied knowledge does. You already know most of what you need to know. You know you should wake up earlier and use the morning wisely. You know you should spend less than you earn. You know you should invest in your skills. You know you should take care of your health. You know you should make the call, write the plan, take the risk. The problem is rarely ignorance. The problem is neglect. There is a big difference between not knowing and not doing, and sometimes we hide behind learning because it feels productive. Reading feels productive, planning feels productive, talking about goals feels productive, but if there is no execution attached to it, it becomes a sophisticated form of procrastination. You can attend 10 seminars on success and still be stuck. You can read every book on discipline and still lack discipline. You can memorize principles and never practice them. And here's the danger: the more you know without acting, the more you fool yourself into thinking you're progressing. You say, "I'm working on it." You say, "I'm preparing." You say, "I'm getting ready." But preparation that never turns into performance is just delay. Let me give you a simple example. Suppose a man wants to get healthy. He buys books on nutrition. He follows fitness experts online. He watches videos about workouts. He can explain carbohydrates and protein better than a trainer, but he doesn't exercise. He doesn't change his eating habits. He doesn't move. Is he healthier because he understands health? Of course not. Understanding is not transformation. Transformation begins the moment knowledge turns into behavior. And this is where many dreams begin to fade, right in that space between I know and I do. You see, knowledge creates responsibility. Once you know better, you are accountable for doing better, and that can be uncomfortable, because if you don't act, you can no longer blame ignorance. You can't say, "Nobody told me." Now you know, and knowing demands action. Some people keep learning because learning is safe. Action is risky. When you act, you might fail. When you act, someone might judge you. When you act, you might discover you're not as good as you hoped. But when you only study, you protect your ego. You can always say, "I'm still preparing." That way, you never have to test yourself. But here is the truth: life rewards action, not intention. You don't get paid for what you know. You get paid for the you deliver. You don't build confidence by reading about courage. You build confidence by acting in spite of fear. You don't create momentum by thinking. You create momentum by moving. The man who reads one book and applies one idea can outperform the man who reads 50 and applies none. One implemented idea can change your income. One disciplined habit can change your body. One courageous conversation can change your relationship. One consistent action repeated daily can change your future. But it must be done, not admired, not discussed, not postponed, done. And here's something else: the longer you wait to act on what you know, the harder it becomes. Delay builds doubt. Delay builds guilt. Delay slowly erodes belief in yourself. You start questioning your own promises. You say you'll wake up early tomorrow, and you don't. You say you'll start next week, and you don't. Over time, you stop trusting yourself, and when you lose trust in yourself, dreams lose their power. That's why the gap between knowing and doing is so dangerous. It's silent. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly widens while you convince yourself you're making progress. Closing that gap requires a decision that says, from this day forward, I will act on what I learn, even if it's imperfect, even if it's small. Even if it's uncomfortable, you don't need more information, you need more implementation. Take one idea, apply it today, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, today, because the value of knowledge is measured only by the action it inspires. And if you want your dreams to survive, stop collecting ideas and start executing them. Now, once you understand that knowledge without action is self-deception, the next question becomes simple. What allows a person to consistently act on what they know? The answer is discipline. Discipline is the bridge between ideas and results. It is the structure that carries your dreams from imagination into reality. Without it, intentions collapse. With it, even modest goals become inevitable. Most people don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they lack consistency, and consistency is born from discipline. You see, discipline is not something dramatic. It's not loud. It doesn't attract applause. It's quiet. It's private. It's the decision to do what must be done, especially when you don't feel like doing it. Anyone can act when they feel inspired. Anyone can work hard when motivation is high. But what about the mornings when you're tired? What about the days when progress is slow? What about the moments when nobody is watching? That's where discipline separates the dreamers from the achievers. Discipline is choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. Comfort says, sleep a little longer. Discipline says, get up. Comfort says, spend it now. Discipline says, invest it. Comfort says, skip it today. Discipline says, stay consistent. And here is something powerful. Discipline is learned. It is practiced. It is built one small decision at a time. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly becomes disciplined in every area of life. It starts small. It starts with keeping a promise to yourself. It starts with doing one thing you said you would do. Maybe it's reading 10 pages a day. Maybe it's saving a small percentage of your income. Maybe it's exercising for 30 minutes. Maybe it's making that uncomfortable phone call. Small disciplines, repeated daily, create large results over time. People often overestimate what they can do in a month and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. Why? Because they lack the patience to let discipline compound. The farmer does not plant seeds and dig them up the next day to check progress. He plants, waters, and waits. That is discipline. The athlete does not train once and expect victory. He trains daily. That is discipline. The entrepreneur does not build a business on enthusiasm alone. He builds it through structure, routine, and relentless follow-through. Discipline turns potential into performance. And let me tell you something else. Discipline is far lighter than regret. The pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret can last a lifetime. Imagine looking back 5 years from now and realizing you could have changed your life if you had simply followed through. That's heavy, that's a burden, but waking up early, that's light. Saying no to unnecessary expenses, that's light. Sticking to your plan when it's inconvenient, that's light. We avoid discipline because it feels restrictive. But in reality, discipline creates freedom. Financial discipline creates financial freedom. Health discipline creates physical freedom. Time discipline creates lifestyle freedom. Without discipline, you become a servant to your moods, and moods are unreliable leaders. Some days you'll feel unstoppable. Other days you won't feel like moving at all. If your life is controlled by feelings, your results will always fluctuate. But when your life is guided by discipline, your results stabilize. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to build momentum. You begin to see progress not because you're extraordinary, but because you're consistent, and consistency is more powerful than intensity. It's not about working 18 hours one day and burning out the next. It's about steady progress. It's about showing up. It's about honoring your commitments even when no one is there to praise you. That's the character. building part of success. Every disciplined action casts a vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you follow through, you strengthen your identity. You stop saying, I'm trying, and you start saying, I do. And once discipline becomes part of who you are, the gap between knowing and doing begins to close naturally. You no longer debate whether to act. You simply act. It becomes standard. It becomes expected of yourself. You don't need to be extreme. You don't need to be perfect. You simply need to be disciplined enough to move forward daily. Success is rarely about dramatic breakthroughs. It is about daily decisions. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is found in what you do consistently. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, consistently. So if you truly want to protect your dreams from disappearing, build the bridge. Lay it brick by brick with disciplined action, and remember this, discipline is not punishment, it is the pathway to freedom. Now let's talk about something that misleads a lot of people on the journey between knowing and doing. Emotion will get you started, but habit is what keeps you going. We live in a world that celebrates motivation. People love the surge of inspiration. They love the music, the applause, the powerful quote that gives them goosebumps. And there's nothing wrong with that. Emotion is powerful. It can ignite desire. It can wake you up. It can push you to make a decision, but emotion is unstable. You can feel unstoppable on Monday and uncertain by Wednesday. You can feel committed at night and doubtful in the morning. Feelings rise and fall. They are like waves, strong one moment, quiet the next. If your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. The professional understands this. The amateur does not. The amateur says, I'll do it when I feel ready. The professional says, I'll do it because it needs to be done. That is the difference. When you rely only on emotion, you become a prisoner of your moods. On the days you feel confident, you take action. On the days you feel tired, discouraged, or distracted, you stop. And when you stop too often, momentum disappears. And when momentum disappears, doubt creeps in. But habit changes everything. A habit removes the debate. When something becomes a habit, you no longer ask yourself whether you should do it. You simply do it. You don't negotiate with your alarm clock. You don't argue with your schedule. You don't wait for inspiration to arrive. You've decided in advance. That's the power of structure. That's the power of routine. It protects you from your own inconsistency. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up each morning and search for motivation. You don't stand there negotiating whether it's worth it. It's automatic. It's built into your identity. Now imagine if your growth habits were just as automatic. Imagine if reading daily required no emotional push. Imagine if saving money was non-negotiable. Imagine if exercising happened whether you felt excited or not. That's when the gap between knowing and doing begins to close permanently. You see, motivation is a spark. But habits are the engine. A spark can start a fire, but without fuel, it dies quickly. Many dreams begin with excitement. Someone attends a seminar, reads a powerful book, watches an inspiring video, and they feel ready to conquer the world. They write goals, they make plans, they tell their friends, but a week later, life interrupts, energy drops. Challenges appear, and because there is no system in place, the dream fades. It was built on emotion, not structure. The key is to design your life in a way that supports your goals, even when your feelings don't cooperate. Set a specific time for your work, create a dedicated space, track your progress, reduce distractions. Make it easier to succeed than to fail. These are not dramatic moves, they are practical ones. Emotion says, I'm excited about my future. Habit says, here's what I do at 6 a.m. every day. Emotion says, I want to be successful. Habit says, here's my daily action list. One is a feeling. The other is a framework, and frameworks win in the long run. Let me share something important. Confidence does not come from hype. It comes from evidence, and evidence is built through repetition. Every time you complete your daily habit, you gather proof that you are reliable. You begin to trust yourself, and self-trust is one of the most powerful forces in achievement. When you trust yourself, you stop second-guessing. You stop doubting every move. You become steady. That steadiness is what carries you through difficult seasons. There will be days when progress feels invisible, days when the results don't match the effort, days when you wonder if it's worth it. In those moments, emotion may fail you, but habit will carry you forward, because habit says, "This is who I am." And identity is stronger than motivation. If you see yourself as someone who shows up daily, you will show up daily. If you see yourself as someone who keeps promises, you will keep promises. But identity is shaped by repeated behavior. You become what you repeatedly do. So instead of chasing motivation, build rituals. Instead of waiting for the perfect mood, build momentum through repetition. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It has to be consistent. Small, daily actions may feel insignificant in the moment, but compounded over months and years, they create extraordinary outcomes. A single workout doesn't transform a body. A single savings deposit doesn't build wealth. A single page doesn't write a book. But daily repetition does, and once habit takes over, progress feels less like a struggle and more like a rhythm. That's when the gap between knowing and doing becomes narrow. That's when your dreams stop depending on emotion and start depending on discipline-driven systems. So use emotion to start, let it inspire you, let it wake you up, but never depend on it to carry you all the way. Because the people who succeed are not the most motivated, they are the most consistent, and consistency, built through habit, is what turns intention into achievement. Now let's come to something that many people try not to think about: the cost of inaction. We've talked about knowledge without action. We've talked about discipline as the bridge. We've talked about building habits that outlast emotion. But none of that matters unless you fully understand this final truth: the cost of inaction is far greater than the pain of action. Most people avoid action because it feels uncomfortable. Making the call feels uncomfortable. Starting the project feels uncomfortable. Waking up early feels uncomfortable. Changing your routine feels uncomfortable, and so they delay. They say, "I'll start next week. I'll do it when things calm down. I just need a little more time." But time does something interesting. It doesn't wait. It doesn't pause because you're uncertain. It keeps moving, and while it moves, opportunities shift, energy fades, circumstances change. Every day you postpone action, you are making a decision, even if you don't realize it. You are deciding to stay the same, and staying the same has a price. The pain of action is immediate. It's felt in the moment. It might be the sting of rejection. It might be the strain of discipline. It might be the fear of stepping into something new. But the pain of inaction is subtle. It grows quietly. It shows up as regret. It shows up as frustration. It shows up as that question in the back of your mind: what if I had tried? Regret is heavy. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, looking back at today. You had the idea, you had the ability, you had the opportunity, but you hesitated, you waited, you allowed fear to make the decision for you. That weight, that realization, is far heavier than the temporary discomfort of taking action today. People often overestimate the risk of action and underestimate the risk of doing nothing. They think, what if I fail? But they rarely ask, what if I never try? Failure teaches. Failure builds resilience. Failure sharpens skill. But inaction teaches nothing. It builds nothing. It strengthens only doubt, and doubt grows stronger the longer you listen to it. You see, Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of fear. Every successful person you admire has faced uncertainty. They have felt unprepared. They have questioned themselves, but they moved anyway. Action creates clarity. When you move, you learn. When you move, you adjust. When you move, you discover strengths you didn't know you had. But when you stand still, your imagination often exaggerates the danger. Problems look bigger from a distance. Fears grow in silence. Motion reduces fear. Think about it. The hardest part of many tasks is starting. Once you begin, momentum builds. Energy follows movement. Confidence follows execution. But if you wait for confidence before acting, you may wait forever. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is a result of action. And here's something else to consider. Dreams require nourishment. They require attention. They require effort. If you neglect them long enough, they weaken, not because they weren't possible, but because they weren't pursued. The world does not steal your dreams. Procrastination does. Distraction does. Comfort does. Each day you delay, your dream becomes a little more distant. Not because it moved, but because you did not. Now, I'm not suggesting reckless action. I'm not suggesting you leap without thought. Planning has its place. Preparation has its place. But planning must lead to execution. Preparation must lead to performance. At some point, you must step forward. You must decide that temporary discomfort is a small price to pay for long-term fulfillment. Because here is the real question: which pain do you prefer? The pain of discipline or the pain of regret? The discomfort of growth or the disappointment of stagnation? The fear of trying or the certainty of staying stuck? You cannot avoid pain entirely, but you can choose which type you experience. The pain of action shapes you. It strengthens you, it stretches you, it builds character. The pain of inaction shrinks you, it limits you, it erodes belief in yourself. Every day offers a simple choice: move closer or stay where you are. And movement does not have to be massive. It just has to be consistent. One step, one call, one page, one decision aligned with your goal. Small actions, taken daily, prevent large regrets later. When you look back on your life, you will rarely regret the risks you took. You will regret the chances you avoided. You will regret the ideas you ignored. You will regret the times you allowed fear to have the final word. So act while the idea is fresh. Act while the opportunity is present. Act before doubt builds walls that don't need to exist. Because the distance between the life you have and the life you want is measured in action. And if you want your dreams to survive, choose the temporary pain of action over the permanent